And now it is my honor to introduce two amazing and multi-talented people, Greg Sarris and Joan Baez.
Juggle my pages.
Well, you're lucky that you don't have to hold the mic and read, which
That's
I'm going to ask you to do. Anyway, hello everybody. I'm so happy you're all here. Let me just begin by saying I'm an English major and a professor. This is a remarkable book of poetry. Remarkable. I was moved in ways. I mean, I've known Joan's work. We know, obviously, her music. We know her drawings, her paintings. We've seen so much in the film recently. If you haven't seen the film, I Am a Noise, you should really see that. But reading this, Joan, I got so much a sense of peace and forgiveness and a happiness. And it began, you set the tone so well in the beginning. Richard Blanco said that you have moved past the dichotomy of black and white and revel in the gray. And there's so much joy we'll get to later and whimsical and fun in the gray. But I think to set the tone, if you would be so kind, Joan, is to read that first poem that certainly sets the tone and says so much about what's to come in the book.
Okay. This is called Goodbye to the Black and White Ball. I used to think the alternative to black and white must be gray, and to avoid living a dull life, I dressed in black and white. I thought in black and white, not just good or bad, mind you, but perfect or damned, gifted or worthless, ethereal or demonic, emblazoned or cast out. I scoffed at anything average and avoided middle ground, the gray area, and as a result, I let slip most of my life. I was chronically anxious, insomniac, promiscuous, multiphobic, depressed, hypervigilant, and luckily immensely talented. I had antennae that could turn corners ahead of me to protect me from the mortal danger of, say, eating dinner at a restaurant or making a new friend, the gray area. When I was half a century old, I tore off the antennae and turned my life over to a power greater than myself, which at that point could have been a toothpick. I pitched myself into a sea of memories and headed blindly like a hoodwinked shark for the marrow of the inner core me. I pictured pustules of venom, but my therapist suggested it might be diamonds. For months, I thrashed about, recording dreams, grasping for clues, fighting for my life and the life of my son. When I came up for air from my flailing, I began to see shards of color. Slowly, I began to see that my life was sanctified and matchless, and I would trade it for no other. I should not have been shocked to find that a diamond was, in fact, the core of me. I continued to scrape off tenacious parasites. I discovered that sorrow is an ocean, fury is blue, pain is my companion, but love had not been smashed to bits so badly as to not be mendable, like a gypsy violin crushed beneath a Nazi boot. I needed patience and an artisan. My therapists became my artisans. People around me unearthed gems I had been promised and held my heart in their cradling hands, as I split up into 100 pieces, 100 bright souls, sorting out their places in a dazzling necklace, taking in and reflecting sunlight, working to mend me, to help me survive my deliverance and transcend my survival.
You know, Joan, as we get older, you look
Excuse
back.
me.
As I get older, I think so much of what have I let slip so much of my life. And when I was younger, as a scholar, I would write the lines that somehow would tell everything about the poem. You get older and you underline the lines that say something about you, right? So, but the other thing you said is you talked here in the poem about your soul splitting into 100 pieces. And of course, that somewhat ties, I'm making a segue here, into the process of writing, how you write. And you mentioned that your writing process, that you write for many little authors, or they for me. And that's somewhat connected to some of what you went through in therapy and so forth.
Yes. I was searching around for whatever traumas had brought on the behaviors that had made my life so difficult for so many years. And in doing so, we discovered that I had multiple personalities, a lot of personalities. And that's sometimes difficult for people to understand, or they think they understand it. They, for me, are very real people inside of me, and some of these people wrote. And between the year 1991 and about 1998, I wrote voraciously. And as it turns out, I was either heavily influenced by these inner folks and their feelings and their fears and their delights and their forgiveness. And so some of them wrote way better than I did. And the test will remain if I continue to write, and not just write editing my people, if I write on my own, to see if it's as interesting as they were and have been. So periodically, I mean, I give credit to different members of the crew here who did the writing, and we can read some of that later on.
Why don't we read some of that right now? How about Dear Leonard?
Okay, diving right in.
Well, let me preface a little. So many of the poems, as many of Joan's songs, are about the people she knew and knows. And this is one of them. But interestingly enough, you'll see the voice of one or many of the little authors.
And I may or may not read the whole thing. It's kind of long. We'll see. Yeah, one of the best little authors was a German boy named Jascha, and here it says how he came, how he showed up. And it's there were correlations to Leonard Cohen, whom I knew way back when. So at a certain point, Jascha writes here, so I'll read some of what he writes. When he wrote, it was in a very, very strong German accent. And so I'm sparing you that strong one as I read, but still there's a little bit of German accent, because Jascha was German. Here you go. Dear Leonard, remember 1960-something, that filthy hotel? I don't know if you remember it. He was so depressed. He was black. He wasn't just dark. He was pitch dark. And we teased about him because he wrote this magnificent music. He was so dark. I remember 1960-something, that filthy hotel restaurant in the village. Some man throwing up in the phone booth off the lobby, and you, Leonard, my unlikely dinner host. Second all razor blades, we called you. King of black predictions, harbinger of a scorched earth. Yet from your canopy dreams did sisters of mercy drift up, lovely and winking, full of folly. And Suzanne, and that careless ghost, pure as our young beliefs, beautiful as the new age, daughter of the dawn of Aquarius, an absent-minded seductress, hurling tote bags of goodness to the dreamers stuck in line at Woodstock, and Joan of Arc, and Bernadette, and all the other little birds on wires. So much beauty from so much darkness. What a gift. But now I'm thinking of 1993, Leonard, when I listened to your wordless song, Tacoma Trailer, while I sat in a hotel room windowsill in Würzburg, Germany, and watched a snowstorm tear past in horizontal white splendor. As your piano chords filled my chest, I saw, plain as life itself, a tattered little boy appear outside, straining uphill against the storm. He wore tattered shorts, a too small jacket, and ruined shoes. I brought him up with my eyes into the warmth of my room and into the shelter of my arms. From your canopy dreams came this boy who spoke his own lyrics to your melody. Take these silver pools from my eyes. I'm ever so young, and my knees are blue from the cold, and my hands are frozen. My name is Yasha. I'm 12 years old. My family was all killed in the Holocaust. My mother, I don't remember, except that she was dark and beautiful. My father, nothing. My sisters and brothers, nothing. Do you suppose he doesn't know the war is over? Do you think, Leonard, that I am one of your sisters of mercy, or just a vessel in which to hold this miraculous boy? Yasha turned to leave, but I pled with him to stay. He told me, I shall go back out into the driving snow, and the little silver pools in my eyes will freeze over, and I will be then blind, with no more reason to go on, and I can lie down in the snow. Then, and I will hear music of violins and rich cellos, and I will die. This is the simplest in what I expect. He didn't die.
Yes, you can read the rest of the poem to get to the end of the story, or Yasha's story anyway. Joan, that's another thing, as I was reading this, the emotional range of these poems. I mean, the very somber, sad story of Yasha, and of course the memory of the Holocaust that's evoked here is one thing, but at the same time, and a lot of people, I mean, I remember stories about you in the 60s. Didn't they try to get you on TV? The big joke was to see if they could get Joan Baez to laugh.
Yeah. It's still on. You could find it, make Joan Baez laugh, and they couldn't.
Yeah.
I remember who was playing Saturday Night Live. And somebody was playing me, and they tried everything. They were standing on their head and, whatever, and Joan Baez would not smile.
But I think what you're sensing, folks, and what I certainly know is Joan is a lot of fun, and she laughs a lot, and there's really a whimsical side that when I mentioned the range of her work and the tone of her poetry here, there is a lot of fun. And one of the poems that certainly had me, well, there are a few that really had me laughing, and thinking about my own creped skin, was Low, Low Impact Class. Would you share that with us?
Sure. What page is it?
It's on page 107.
Okay. So the thing about this poem is I wrote it once, this is like 40 years ago, right? I was writing it about these old ladies in the gym class. And now, guess what? Okay, you ready for this? Okay.
I'm ready.
Okay. At the 6 a.m. low impact class in my local gym, the crepe-skinned ladies with nets over their pin curls, small humps on their backs, soft webs at the elbow bend, and no bottoms to speak of, do the power walk, knee bends, and surprisingly confident leg lifts to the pulsing beat of I Will Survive. Music thoughtfully chosen by the 23-year-old instructor, whose skin is tight and lustrous and whose head is full of dry leaves. And who chides, come on ladies, and the old girls push on, stay the course, and last a full hour. Afterwards, they have a lovely steam bath and a shower, dry off, powder their parts, then maneuver their bodies into street clothes. They take out pin curls and comb up, apply cheeks, lips, and eyes, pack towels into fluorescent gym bags, and with endorphin counts which would put their middle-aged kids to shame, head rosily out to greet the rising winter sun.
Joan, you couldn't see, but I could. There were a lot of heads nodding.
Little white heads.
You said it, I didn't.
They call us Q-tips.
Yes. How do you go from that? But if you read the book, you'll see how she does it. She does it effortlessly. One of the things that you talked a lot about, and for those of you who've seen the film I Am a Noise, is the problematic and somewhat complicated relationship you had with your father. And, you know, when I got to the poems in the book about him, I thought, oh no, where's she gonna go? But it came after the black and white, and it came to something where you get to the end, and even though you've had a difficult relationship, you try to look for that moment where that person was happy, and remember him, and you remembering him or her that way. And you did that with your father. It's called Nowadays on 119. And Joan, again, I told you I was going to grill you when we spoke yesterday, but I don't think the audience minds hearing you read, right?
In case you hadn't figured it out, I love reading, especially my own stuff. So
That's Joan.
I'm in the right place then.
Yeah.
Nowadays, to my father on his 93rd year. Nowadays, his thoughts and words escape on wings into the elegant draping vines of the weeping willow. And time is lost, but he is found, and blind no more to me. Long after his death, I saw my father in the hotel pool, young, brown, and guileless, sucking in his tummy, jumping in. He started a side stroke. Swim pops, I said silently. And silently he said, oh, how I've missed this. And he swam and swam, back and forth, end to end, beginning to end, all health and happiness. This was my father, young and happy. This was me, overflowing with love.
That's really beautiful. And
would you pour this for me?
would I pour it for you? Yes, I think I can. Remember, I told you these muscles are just ornamental.
Thank you.
The other thing, you remember your mother and father, and you remember them, and you even remember or imagine them forgiving each other. And for your mother and father together in the light, in the darkness, that's a really powerful thing. Because your mom and dad divorced and then remarried like when they were 89 or 90
No,
or
they were
something.
90 years old that day. No, they've been divorced for 30 years. My mother found her life much simpler that way, but my father mourned and grieved and carried on, but it didn't work, you know. I mean, my mom's, her crisis was, he lived out on Green Bay Boardwalk, and she lived down in Palo Alto. Either she could go frequently and visit him and not feel guilty, or she could stay at home and feel guilty. So she went through this on and off with him. So which one is it and where am I?
It is, 145. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Let me jump back. It's on 139, Together in the Light, in the Darkness. And it really, it's again a coming together and an understanding at the end of life, which you did in the poem for both of them.
In the meantime, you should know about their second wedding. My father wrote to my mom and he said, I'm an old man, I'm going to die soon, and I want to die a married man, and you're the only person I want to be married to. And I said, Mom, what are you going to do? And she said, oh, what the hell? I meant yes. So I began this long battle with him because all of their lives, my father was so handsome, he was so good looking, but he wouldn't dress up. He was professor, he was whatever, you know. And
well, he was a famous scientist.
He was a famous, yes, excuse me, I always forget that part. He really was. He co-invented the X-ray microscope. There you go, Papa. So anyway, Mom had always hoped that he would put on a tuxedo or look really nice. So I heard about this second wedding and I called him up and I said, hey, I hear you're going to get married. He says, yes, Joan's decided to marry me again. I said, great, what are you going to wear? He said, something comfortable. I said, if you wear something comfortable, I'm not coming. And I'm supposed to hand you the ring. So he fought it for a while. He said, well, I can't get to the store anymore. He's in a wheelchair. I said, good, the store will come to you. And he said, but I don't know my size. I said, Papa, you are a mathematician. I know that you've heard of a tape measure. I'm sure we can work something out here. And finally he caved, and he did. He showed up in a tuxedo. I think Mom really wanted to do the wedding because she really loved false eyelashes, and she got to put them on and put her nicest outfit on. At any rate, it was kind of a sweet ceremony out of my mom's patio. And when I did, you know, I was handed my dad the ring. He's kind of really out there by then. I reached over, I said, Pop, it's the ring. He says, I can't remember what I'm supposed to do with it. I said, you put it on Mom's finger. Oh, he says, oh, okay. Put it on her finger. Okay. Together in the light, in the darkness. He was an absentee husband. He loved my mother desperately, fanatically, adoringly, blindly, but not well. We kids gave him 1,000 hints of how he could make her happy, but there came no flowers, no symphony, no bistro, no pretty teacup, no earrings. He was instead a great man, a fine teacher, a brilliant researcher, a doer of good deeds. And now my mother carries the burden of guilt. Why didn't I listen when he told me about the things he loved? About math, physics, equations, standing waves. Will you forgive me, she says silently. Will you forgive me? She will walk back again and again to the utter chaos of his little house out on the boardwalk, on the murky marsh. And in the midst of the science weeklies, encyclopedias, awards for contribution to science and humanitarian causes, all the things he cannot let go of. In the midst of the clutter, she will move toward him as he's crumbling, and she will breathe in and breathe out and touch him, his hand, his hurt knee, his forehead, and they will be together in the light, in the darkness.
Your mother had her own inner life, and she certainly had Well, you've told me a lot of stories. I love the story, which is in a poem here, about your mother and the bathing suit at the YMCA, I think it was, and she was what, 95, and she had a kind of a crush on the young guy that was the...
And he had it back on her. She was 91, he was 75.
Oh,
He couldn't keep his hands off her.
but then she got a new bathing suit, and he didn't like that, so she threw the new bathing suit out and went back to the old one, right?
Exactly what she did, yeah.
But
She also, pardon me, but in the swimming pool showers after class with Vladimir, all the old crepe-skinned ladies would have a shower, take showers, and they had a place you could sit if you wanted to under the shower. And her caregivers would say, "Why don't you sit down? Why don't you sit down?" She said, "No, some old lady might want to sit there." I know the feeling, you know.
yes. So, but your mother had this incredible inner life, and as a young teenage girl, she heard this incredible singer, Jussi.
Jussi Björling, yeah.
Yes. And I guess she played his records later in life. And obviously, well, I don't know obviously, but she remembered that young man forever. And I think the poem at the end, well, there's a poem, it says, My Young Mom, which talks about that, that night she met him, or imagined she met him. Did she actually meet him?
No, Mom took me to see him in concert in 1969, sorry, 59. And the concert was canceled. But all of my life, I've been so grateful to her. It's kind of touched that she wanted me to see it. We got that far. We didn't get to see him, but I had heard his music all of my growing up years.
And it was beautiful music, and in some ways, your singing was kind of there for her in place of that memory, I would imagine.
Yeah, she was my best fan, and that she wanted the quality of the music to be right up there. But she always was really deeply moved by it and appreciative of it. And we could talk about that. And the thing with Björling was that when he died, it was shortly after the time she tried to get me to his concert. And I was just coming into my own, I was in Cambridge at the coffee shops, just on the cusp of my own career starting. And I always had felt this mystical thing around my mom, me, Björling, the initials being the same, that somehow or other he's passed his voice on to me, which may be utter nonsense, but that is what I felt. This is really long. You really want me to read this now?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's the title poem, and I told you about the first poem to her mother, which kind of will set it up when you get towards the end of the book. So I think the poem will tell you everything, and it's beautiful, Joan. Honor us to read this.
Okay, this is a longie. The lighting is really terrible here, but I don't think there's anything we can do about it except complain. I'll sit like this. When you see my mother, ask her to dance. On a dance floor somewhere, thank you, on the eastern seaboard in the summer of 1931, a crowd of girls and almost men, in the cool shadows, my teenage mother, in the warm lights, Swedish tenor, Jussi Björling. I courteously ask you, dear Jussi, when you see my mother, ask her to dance. She's the dark girl. She's a gypsy and a vamp, a foster child. She's a flower. She gazes up, her eyes immense and frightened. Her lips are painted red and sewn in silence. Just behind a fluttering and insufferable shyness, she thinks, although no one ever says as much, she might be beautiful. You can tell her, Jussi. She would hear the words from you. This little bird adrift in flight would hear the words from you. She's but 18. You are that plus 2. A prodigy, a star already risen. My mother is too shy. Your English is too weak. So, Please extend your hand accommodatingly and with a smile, lead her out, around and through the glittering crowd and snapshot faces. Grip my mother firmly by her waist and to the surging strains of violins. Now bow just slightly and begin to waltz. You're light upon your feet, young man, for one of such sturdy stock from the land of ceaseless winters, frozen lakes, and nights that never end. Your eyes are royal blue, aquamarine, or slate, or powder. They're Nordic sea change eyes, set in your round and pleasant face, deceptive in its jovial effect, save for the force of an unyielding jaw and chin, your armor in the war against the giving up of childhood. In this ballroom, you are everything to catch the eye. Handsome tucks and fluted tie, and now my gypsy mother by your side. She moves with you in tandem, leaning close against your mighty chest, with no more weight than a small bird alighting in its nest. When she makes a move to leave at song's end, keep her hand and dance again, and then again, until she's flushed and her vermilion lips have at last parted in a smile. So then, guide her through the noisy coterie and pour this girl a glass of punch. How disarming is your presence as you move tonight. You see, schooled in the opera at the age of 4, toured with your brothers at the age of 8, debuted with the Royal Swedish Opera at 19. And so, in silence, but with smiles and whatever bond was born of the dancing and the heat, sip your drinks until they are but melting bits of ice. I ask you, dear Yusi, please take my mother out onto the leafy balcony, dappled, dark, and deserted. Hear the click of her high heels supporting slender legs and tender feet. Did you see the concrete bench tucked in among the trees over at the farthest end? Notice the light of chandeliers and sconces trapped inside the teeming hall, but casting muted rectangles which stretch as softly as the breeze against the ivy-covered walls. The night cloaks my mother's elegant little gown, her elegant little gown, arranged for her by foster mothers, all of whom meant well, I guess. They took the little Scottish waif to the most prestigious stores in town and hinted to her, coaxed her, and suggested to her any pretty dress she might prefer. Try as they might to pin her down, she stood, a frozen silhouette, against the shipwreck of her childhood, where in all the ruins there was not a shard of mirror to reflect her beauty or show her some fine thing she might deserve. So the foster mothers did the choosing, and though trying to be kind, they tied fine lace and ribbons all around her, and they tied her tongue at the same time. And what of you, dear Yusi? Your tongue quite clearly was not tied, but whither went your childhood? It was barely started when at 16 your mother died. Had I been your mother, I would surely have been torn between the grooming of a genius and the countless ways that childhood's careless days are formed. Did she hear the timbre of your voice the moment you were born? Or in the summer breezes you sing about and mourn? Your voice resounds with tears accumulated from the age of 4, when mystery's infant intuition warned you of the coming hardships you would certainly endure. Out upon the darkened balcony, my mother feels a rush of expectation as she follows closely on your arm. Hold her hand, dear Yusi. Lead her to the bench and sit her down, and then sing to her. Oh, Yusi, sing her anything. In the ballroom, the orchestra has just struck up some current hit you know by heart, and so you sing to her. You sit next to her, hold her hand, and sing. And as you sing, she feels a quickening of her heart, a tingling from head to toe, or might it be from wing to wing? Oh, dear Yusi, how your tucks lend splendor to the night. It was your voice that kept pale ember burning deep inside the guarded walls beyond my mother's frozen silhouette. So, out upon the balcony, what happens next? The song is over. My mother's eyes shimmer with a shock of tears, with life. The orchestra flips pages to another song. You put your free hand to my mother's cheek. She's quite lovely, after all. Her eyes close as she tilts her cheek into your wrist. Does she clutch your hand? Does she brush it with her lips? When she meets your gaze again, your sea change eyes have imperceptibly shifted to something like surprise and curiosity, an unsuspected awakening to this half-seductive waif, this shining bird, this wild, heather-scented Scot. What choice have you, dear Yusi, but to kiss my mother? Kiss my mother. Kiss her now, before you even know her name, or that your initials are the same, Yusi Burling, Joan Bridge. It's but a soft embrace, a tender kiss. My mother is not surprised. She is happy. I make of this all that I please, all that I wish, all I believe. And I believe with all my heart and all my soul, the filament that lines the burnished edge of my own voice, the naked talent I was given without choice. That part of me looks wistfully and listens lovingly, listens longingly to songs sung on a balcony a half a century ago. My voice knows instinctively it was conceived that night by the dancing shadows, by the dancing light. As the years passed, my mother remained true to the dreams in black and white, to her youthful heart's delight. And when she headed swiftly towards the very edge of glory, I pressed into her stubborn hand a copy of this story, a ticket, as it were, to where sumptuous curtains glide in silence to reveal in living color a familiar figure on a stage, and she stands, a frozen silhouette, against the splendor of the present. It said the spirit has no fixed age when it awakens to its change of circumstance, but I think it is the age of a certain moment of exquisite chance. So, when you see my mother, ask her to dance. First time I've done a long one for anybody, so thank you. So, let me counter it with one I know by heart, just to bring you backgrounds. This is called Piggy Trio. This maybe it's too quick, it's Safeway, but this little piggy played violin.
Joan's very capable of the quick segments.
This little piggy played violin. This little piggy played drums. This little piggy played sticks and bells. And this little piggy played none. The last little piggy ran and ran and ran all the way home, listening to the beautiful trio in his head. And he got so excited he wet himself, which is where the wee, wee, wee comes from. And soon thereafter, he taught himself how to play piccolo and stay dry.
This is one of the things that happens with Joan. You get real serious and deep, and then she'll
Spring one on you.
spring one on you, you're laughing and all of that, and then you just love her and her work all the more. I was going to get really kind of serious here and deep, and then she does the pig things, you see. Joan, obviously I think we can just see from what you've read the love that you have and are able to get to. But so much of that, and it's been well documented, and you yourself have talked about the problems of your childhood, and our childhood, and feeling in many ways illegitimate or strange or weird, and all the stuff that parents and childhood and stuff does to you. And then on top of that, you are immensely talented. And at 18, you're put out in front of the world and you become this icon, and you haven't even had really a chance to deal with your childhood or to grow up, and it was much later. And again, so much of this and so much of our lives as we get older, the challenge is to not be afraid anymore, to get past fear. You alluded to that a little earlier. And you know, fear is such a
Bugger.
yes. and it's one of the things you wrestle with. You know, again, in your film, how many of you have seen I Am a Noise? Yeah, okay, good. And if you haven't, go see it. You can see it on airplanes now. Everybody tells me they see it on the airplane. But it's a very, when we began with that film, there's been many films about Joan's life and her story and her legacy and so forth, but none that really went under the surface of Joan Baez like that, because you were so honest. And here, the consequence of getting past your fear and your honesty comes through in the beauty of this poetry, the love that's here. And of course, always your humor and so forth. But one of the poems that I thought about, it's called Afraid. And it reminded me in many ways of Joy Harjo's poem, I Release You, where she releases her fear. I release you, like a mantra. And you did this very similar thing here. It's therapeutic. Would you read it?
What page is it?
What page? Okay, let's see. I'm so smart. Page 45.
That's pretty smart.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. 45? Got too many of these in here. They're not helping me at all. 45. Okay. Yeah, I did used to count. I was terrified of flying, but I flew a lot, and I would sit in the back of the plane and count, just count. Somehow or other that was going to keep me safe until we landed. So.
One other thing before I ask, I just have before I forget, because you know I'm getting old. You were also terrified. You had horrible stage fright. Did you count before you went out on stage sometimes?
I wonder if I did, or whether I just curled up in a ball and shook. It was really horrible.
Yeah.
That's all over now. Okay.
Obviously.
Okay. Afraid. When I was afraid, I would count. 1001, 1002, the plane will land. 1003, 1004, the trunk will open, the arm will move, the scream will come, the baby will be born. 1050, 1051, life is only seconds, they say, one after the next, and on forever, until you die. If that's really true, why not fill every second with light? 1001, 1002, bright lights, shafts, rays, sparks, illuminating the fear until it blanches into whiteness. 1003, 1004, there's my hand, on it my ring, there's the window, beyond it the blue sky, there's my mother pouring a tea, I'm breathing in and out, 1005, 1006, I am not afraid, I am not afraid, not afraid. You relate to that.
Joan, the big question I'm sure that, well, I'm going to ask, you'll keep writing poetry?
Yeah, it depends on how much help I get from these people in here. Seriously, I mean, I can write now. And I've written a little bit. And so, I mean, it'll be interesting to see whether I can write as well as I wrote back then. Although, I had fun editing all this, and some of the writing was new from during the editing period, which is a couple years ago. But we'll see.
And some of them, remember you were finding scraps all over the place, all over your house and different places, poems that you had written over the years.
Well, we looked for them because I remembered them, some of them, and I knew there were some of them. I know there's one on this yellow sheet of paper, and it's down here is this little big, and I went through this, and my wonderful assistant looked for me and with me in the office, in the storage unit, under the bed, everywhere. She found, there was this poem that I knew existed somewhere. She found a 40-year-old computer. It had this poem on it, but she couldn't get it off the computer, so she typed the entire thing out, page for page, and that's kind of how we dug them up. And they're floating around the house still, so that'll be another project to look for them, find them, edit them, and if the world hasn't gone up in smoke, then we'll put out another book, or actually a flood.
Or a flood, yes, whatever it's going to be. Joan, I was also curious, you've done both. You do the poetry and the songs. Is there a difference in writing a song and writing a poem?
For me, there is. That the poem is more fluid, but that's probably because in the song you have, it has to match the melody, or more or less. At least the songs that I wrote. It was easier to do the poetry, because you can kind of do what you want. Once in a while it rhymes, or whoopee, that's icing on the cake. I remember, this is a memory, sorry, meeting Dylan in the village. He had just written Blowing in the Wind. I got in a cab, and I was all, wow, village, folk music, guitars, Bob Dylan. I was doing this to the driver. I said, and there's this guy, and he writes these amazing songs. And the driver said, do they rhyme? I said, as a matter of fact, they do. Where were we? I got you off on that.
We should probably talk here at the end about a poem for your son, Gabe. Maybe before we go to questions, I don't want to leave your son out of the mix here. We've done your mother, father, your immediate family. How about Big Sur for Gabe at 24? It's a beautiful poem, 89, page 89.
If I can read the one that he wrote when he was 3, do you know what page that's on?
Oh yeah, let's go back
It's a
to
great
that.
poem.
Let's
Oh, here we go, I got it.
What page is
Okay,
it on?
it's 50. This is called Bucket of Snow.
Oh, yes.
Written by Gabe Harris, age 3. Mom, I'm going to do sometime? I'm going to get a bucket and attach it to a spring and fill the bucket to a string and fill the bucket with snow and hide there. And then when someone comes along, I'll let go and the bucket will drop on their head. Isn't that funny? So where is
Well, he grew up, and he was at 24, and is on page 89, Joan.
Okay. Gabe's okay. Thank you for asking. He's okay. He's a big boy now. God, he's 50 fucking 3 years old. Shouldn't happen. Where did you say?
Page 89, Big Sur.
Having trouble with about ADD. This is a great t-shirt. It says, ADD? I don't have, ooh, look at the squirrel. Okay, it's called Big Sur for Gabe at his 24th. Here's a cruel beauty, here's thunder and flying mist, craggy granite beds of tiny wildflowers, and mother-of-pearl tears glistening down the fierce cheeks of red clay ghosts. Here's the sound of wind like a forsaken witch, sobbing along the crowfly cliffs, lost in the nether sky, defeated by the coast's brutal beauty. A pure white heron, the king of Castle Rock, preens above silhouettes of hunching brown herons lined up like nuns along the rocks and down to the raging sea. I thought I saw the reef of jade, dancing in a renegade shaft of sunlight, too, and chunks of broken rocks, strewn like emeralds all along the sand. And then I saw my son, my only son, my red clay son, my soulmate son, as he was crouched, bird-like, high atop a massive rock, high above the deafening sea. And as I watched him prayerfully, he spread his arms, reached for the shaft of sunlight, then looked down and smiled at me, the smile of 1,000 suns. Son of heavens, pierce the sky and shine upon my only boy, who radiates like you today. My son's 1,000 suns in one, and I am neither witch nor nun, nor heron white, nor blue, nor brown. I am the mom, the only one, the mother of my only son.
Joan, before we go to questions, is there any poem that I missed or more? I told you yesterday I was going to ask you to read a lot. And I think that's, again, what everybody wants. Is there anything you'd like to read that you haven't?
Well, I'll quote another one. Quoth the raven. Wait a minute.
Shall I find the
Oh,
page?
no, quoth the raven, I'm ravenous. And he pecked out Edgar Allan's eye.
All right, thank you. I just got some questions. Before we go on, I just want to acknowledge our Lieutenant Governor Kounalakis is here. And what I really like, I worked with her on instituting in Proposition 1, women's reproductive rights being institutionalized in the state of California. So there's hope. This is, well, I'll ask this. Where do you turn for guidance in troubled times?
If you really want to know the answer to this, I talk to a tree, and it answers me. And I haven't had a therapist for about 35 years, and honestly, if there's something that's really weighing on me, and my friends can't help me with it, and wise people I call, I'm not getting what I need, I go to, there are a couple of trees, one of them is called the counselor. Put my hands on the tree and basically say, this is the issue. Sometimes I'll say, explain it to me, what's going on. Other times I'll say, don't explain anything, I don't care, just make me feel better. And that works too. So that is the honest answer. I mean, there are some friends who are, I would call, but in the deeper sense of things, it really is nature, specifically those trees to whom I go.
All right. Let's see. This is about Ginger, but Ginger, I'll just say Joan's dog is no longer with us, Ginger, her adorable dog. And there was a question about Ginger here, your dog that used to. Often Ginger would come out on stage with you, and so probably people remember that.
Oh
right?
yeah, she's a show stealer. I mean, it was, your dog walks on the stage and the whole place goes, ah! And then getting them back is impossible. Ginger had one eye for the first, 12 years of her life, maybe less than that. And then she lost both, lost the vision in both of them. And she just would rip across the field because she knew the paths, she knew the pathways. And we would, she also knew that before she banged into a tree, we would say, Ginger! Like left, right. She was an amazing girl. In the field, all the dog walkers knew her, and she was highly respected, madam.
Yes, but let's tell, for me, one of the most interesting
What she
things
did
about
you?
Ginger
No.
was her male friends, coyotes.
Oh yeah, she had 2 litters, like coyotes. Yeah, she was her demeanor was quite fake. Latter part of her life. A couple of the coyote pups are still with friends, and they're funny. They have little pointed coyote ears, and then they have Ginger's kind of rest of her physique, and they lurk. You can tell they're little coyote pups because they lurk.
So she must have met them in the field across the street.
Well, she lived up in Tracy, and
Oh,
so
that's right.
but I guess she'd hear the that was happy time, and run off to the ranch and hang out with her coyote friends.
Joan, that was her UC.
That was her UC. That's right.
I think a lot of us know the answer to this. Were you at Woodstock?
I beg your pardon. Do you have the nerve to raise your hand? You asked that question? Oh dear. Yes, I was. I was at Woodstock.
But let me also footnote that there were
A lot of other girls, and there were practically no women performing at Woodstock, right?
She just took my line. But yes, I was going to honor you with the fact that there were only two other women. One was Janis Joplin, and the other was Melanie. Yes. And you were pregnant.
I was pregnant. Yes, I was pregnant. And I was in the little, they gave us these little, what do you call them? Traveling houses, little small dressing room on wheels. Okay, I was in Joe Cocker's, and everybody's hanging out. Everybody's doing drugs except me. And somebody came on the door, like knock, knock, knock. Everybody okay in there? Yeah. You sure everybody's okay in there? Well, word had gotten out that a woman was giving birth, and he thought maybe it was me. Sorry to disappoint.
In fact, you wrote a poem, if we want to go back to the poems, about Jimi Hendrix, who was there.
Oh yeah, it's a good poem.
Yes, why don't we read that?
Love to. Where is it?
Page 94, my eyes went right to it. It was meant to be.
Okay. Jimmy, you performed just before me at the Isle of Wight and somehow lit the stage on fire. I performed in your wake as the aftermath flickered down through the floodlights. I sang, strike another match, go start anew, and look out, the saints are coming through. You were no saint, but you certainly came through. You came through like a magnificent natural disaster, like a fucking volcano. At Woodstock, you eviscerated the national anthem and made it your own. There were no bombs bursting in air, rockets' red glare. There was only your guitar and 400,000 souls electrified in the dawn's early light, out there in the mud, out there in the volcanic ash, and you were only 27 when you died.
And your song about Janis Joplin in the Quiet Morning.
That was Mimi's. I sang it. Mimi
Oh,
wrote that.
yes, that's right. Mimi wrote that song. Yes, beautiful, powerful song. All right, this one I kind of like. I'm supposed to throw out some of the questions as I read them, edit them. And this one I probably should throw out, but Joan and I share an affinity for a certain kind of bird. So I will ask the question: what are your chickens' names?
I have only a few in my mind. We have a Tina, and we have, the French ones were called Greta. That's German, but it was Greta Garbo, I guess. It's about. The chicken lady is here, but she's so shy, I'm not going to call upon her. The woman who named them all looks after them, loves them, feeds them. All I do is collect their eggs and eat them. And the other names I can't really think of right now. Don't you dare fall asleep on me.
Do you have a memory of performing to share that is one of your fondest memories or story to share? And I love you. That's.
A fun, a what?
Do you have a fond memory? What is one of your fondest memories of performing? Do you have a
Does
memory?
that to be a performing? Can just be one of my fondest moments.
Yeah, that's even
Okay,
better.
that would be jumping in a lake in the Pyrenees. It was freezing, and it's one of the joys of my life that I do. Yeah, that's the first one that came to mind, so that's one I'll give you.
Okay, let's see. Let's see.
He's shuffling through those things.
This one's a bit peculiar. Are you and Jane Fonda planning any kind of tour? Did she sing? I'm sorry.
No, I act.
Yeah,
No, we're not, but she was adorable. She came out and she did one of these hosting things, Q&As with me, and she stood up and she said, Joan and I were not friends all of those years. And I said, it's not too late. Because we weren't, we were sort of, they had put us in different camps. But yeah, she was very bright, and we had a good, not as good as this maybe, but we had a good, back and forth around, that one was around the other book of the upside down drawings. So we'll let you go on that one.
yes. All right. What song have you recorded that do you think has the most poetic lyrics of your songs?
Well, obviously Diamonds and Rust. It was an aberration. I think I've written a lot of good songs, but that was, in my opinion, far enough above, in the quality of it, above all the other songs. Then I'm happy to have written it. I mean, if I was going to write one song in my life, that would be it. I'm lucky enough to have done that.
Do you remember where you were and what state of mind you were? Obviously, you're remembering Dylan, but were you home, and was it coming to you slowly, or did it come fast?
I had written this song. It had absolutely nothing to do with the words that end up. I was that little riff at the beginning, and I was into that, and I wish I could remember. I was writing a song about something else, and then came the telephone call.
Oh, wow.
And after everything switched, and it turned into a song about Bob. She says, tell us about the telephone call.
It's in the song, actually.
What happened? I mean, it distracted me to that point. He had just written Lily Rosemary and the Jack of Hearts, and he wanted me to listen to every word. And I did, but his stuff has so much information in it that reading it one time through was like being run over by a train. He said, what do you think? I said, it's beautiful. I mean, still now when I sing that song, every time I sing it, I hear something new. It's one of those, Lily Rosemary and the Jack of Hearts. Look it up.
That's somewhat related to what are your 3 favorite songs of yours. So that's one. These are hard kind of questions. I suppose they're somewhat like children. I mean, which do you like the best?
I'm not supposed to have favorites. Luckily, I have only one.
That's right, yes. And one song too, or are there others that you might like?
Song.
Yeah.
Skip that question.
Oh. Well, I'm trying to skip a few here.
Nobody's going to know. Just look at it. Make something up. Pretend you know.
So yeah, let's talk. Let's talk about we didn't talk about Mimi and Pauline in your life. I mean, the other immediate family you had, your 3 sisters, and Mimi was an incredible singer. I don't think people realize that her husband. How old was she when he died?
She was 21.
She was 21. Yeah. And all of these talented and amazing people. These Baez women.
It was exhausting.
Yes. So, anything about Mimi? You wrote a poem that again was forgiving. It's in the book, and it's quite beautiful about her frustration at dying and how you...
Yeah, Mimi literally couldn't decide whether she wanted to live or die. And that's the way she spoke about it when she was really quite ill. And she said she didn't know which was more difficult, dying or going on living and having to make the decision she'd have to make. I'm sure other people have been in the same situation.
Yeah. It's a difficult time. There's been a lot of talk lately about different singers and people coming after people with all these sort of ad hominem or ad feminine attacks. And one of them that is Buffy St. Marie. Everybody's upset that maybe she's not a real Indian, so we don't listen to her music. And that's really stupid, really stupid.
Take it from one Indian to another.
Yes, because again, regardless, and you know, people, you must understand that blood never presupposes point of view in the first place. A Clarence Thomas case in point. But the other thing is, Universal Soldier and some of her songs, I don't care what she is, that music and that song is iconic and beautiful and part of a movement that we were all part of. So, do you have want to say anything about that?
No, just the same thing. She was immensely talented and underrated. We should have heard more from her.
Very musical. She was really musical. That's it. Let's see. This is, what other kinds of things that at the moment, anything else you're currently working on or doing, Joan, in the present? I know you're always doing things, and you know, you show up at Glide Memorial, you show up here, you show up everywhere, and
somebody asked me the other night where my activism takes me now, and I said, from the bedroom to the bathroom. I consider myself lucky.
Oh no, Joan, you're still very much out there and outspoken as you are here today. Again, the current climate of things, we talked earlier about, it was a magical time, and you've talked a lot about this in the 60s, when there was unity, when we had to fear the police and all of that, but the music and there was music that went with the movement and movement that went with the music. And that kind of, I mean, your songs and Dylan and that kind of thing, and the question is, who's there today? And you asked that in one of the poems in here. What's happening today? And what's really sad on campus right now is, for the first time in history, we protested and things like that, but for the first time in history, you have student against student.
Well, you know what? It's hard in this era of really efficient propaganda to be able to say the things that we were able to say and have them believed many years ago, but it really have to look carefully at when a good nonviolent protest is being disrupted from within, how much of that is literally paid, people being paid to do that. Of course, there's some just misguided or not very bright, but if you think about it and look at it, that there are different reasons for people behaving like that, and some of them are being paid to do so.
Right.
Just keep it in your mind somewhere.
Right. And of course, in the old days, we may have disagreed politically, but we all agreed that a tree is a tree. Today in the world, they'll have you believe, media, social media and others will have you believe that the tree is a car and we can't talk. So there's like separate worlds we can't even come together on, which is frightening.
And they say, you know, really listen and try to be open to the opposition, etc. I have a really hard time doing that. I just want to see them all dead. Forget I said that, please.
Well,
Really,
I'll
all my
echo it.
nonviolence is just strained to the very end.
By the way, if you have a chance, you Google, and Joan has written, or did write, in 2016 or 17, a song for Donald Trump.
What's it called? Nasty Man. I haven't heard that in ages. That's the last song I wrote in my life. The one before that was called Coconuts. Because I'd run out of songs, I couldn't write anymore, big writer's block, and I called Janice Ian and I said, what do I do? So she gave me all these instructions. And you look around, you see something, you want to write a song about it, looked up on the wall, there's a picture of my son and a coconut. So I wrote this song. This coconut sitting in my hand, reminding me of my island man. My island man sitting in his hut, dreaming about my coconuts. Continuing from there. That was good.
I hadn't heard that one. Do you remember any of the lines from the Donald Trump song? No. Well, anyway, go check it out. It's quite clever. Yes. Anyhow. All right. Well, I think any other final parting words, Joan, that you want to say? I just want to, again, I ask her a question and then I talk. That's great. It's a remarkable book. It's healing. It's joyful. I stayed up. It's incredible. You know, you thought you knew Joan, but this is a whole nother level of her depth, of love, forgiveness, and maybe that's all we have today, Joan.
And surprisingly, it's not. I mean, I was surprised that it's not a political.
No.
It's not a political book. So I will end by doing, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land.